final presentation before lunch is we have Scott Bartlett and Dan Patenaude. Scott is a municipal leader in pavement preservations with over 36 years' experience in the town of Fairfield, Connecticut. And Dan is the sales and marketing manager for Seal Coat Inc. He has spent the last 15 years of his career as a pavement preservation contractor helping agencies up and down the East Coast.
I know you've seen enough of me already today, so I'm going to hopefully give most of the spotlight to Scott Bartlett here from Fairfield. Scott was invited at this gathering to share his really robust pavement preservation program with the audience, and he called me up and thought maybe it would be appropriate to share a presentation with you that we first gave in January in Las Vegas to an audience of about 425 people at the Slurry Systems Workshop. It was very well received there. It's a nice overview of Scott's program. So we're going to tag team it and try to do it together here. And the genesis of the presentation is the fact that Scott and his team in Fairfield were winners of an international award for excellence in pavement preservation as selected in 2017 by the International Slurry Surfacing Association. So quite an honor to be selected for this international award, and the outline of our program today is the reasons why they were selected. And before we jump too far in, I think a lot of you in this audience have seen this picture. This is my favorite pavement preservation picture. The double yellow center line here is the municipal boundary between two communities. And Scott happens to know a little bit about this picture since he's right smack dab in the middle of the story and probably not giving too much away to let you know which side of the road he's responsible for taking care of. So with that, I'll turn it over to him.
Good morning and thank you. The purpose of this slide is just to kind of show you that I'm here in the Northeast as well as all of you. When we practice pavement preservation, everybody always says it won't work in my backyard. I'm colder than you, I get more snow than you, I get this or that. But there we are, the star indicates we're right where you all are. So in terms of, geographically, the procedure's working, the moral is they do work. Basic overview, 288 center miles of road that we maintain. How I got into pavement preservation years ago, we got $750,000 annually for 288 miles. That was like 20 cents a square yard. I mean, nothing that you can sustain that network. So we came up with programs and boosted our money to represent the over 5 million square yards in our network that we needed money to support the maintenance levels, and basically celebrated our peak of 3.5 million in 2016. Unfortunately, I'm here to say that 2019 it's going down to 1.9 million.
So I've had the pleasure of working with Scott for 10 or maybe 12 years now, helping him with his pavement preservation program. And we were the company that actually nominated him in the town of Fairfield, his teammates there, for this award. And in our nomination package that we submitted on their behalf, there were 5 reasons why we suggested they should be winners of this award. The first reason is that they're innovators. And we'll talk about each of these in more detail as we go along. Secondly, they are 100% all in on pavement preservation. They don't dabble in it. It's a way of life for them. Third is Scott and his team are all excellent communicators, and we'll talk about why that's important. Fourth, they're very, very good asset managers. That's what this is all about, asset management. And they've, over the course of time, become regional leaders in terms of municipal pavement preservation and pavement management. So let's jump right into the first of those reasons, and that's the fact that they're fearless innovators. What do we mean by that? I think most of you know that I used to be a public works director for 10 years myself, from early 90s to 2002, and I was anything but an innovator. In fact, I was more of a scaredy cat follower. I think I was 33 years old when I became a public works director, and I wasn't taking a lot of chances. So I'd watch what my neighbors were doing and see if they were successful with those things, and if they were, then I might copycat them. Not the case with Scott. He's constantly pushing his own team, constantly pushing his vendors to think outside the box and look for new and creative ways to do things better and to do things less expensively. In fact, when we were thinking about doing a demonstration project on a bunch of different microsurfacing mixes, he was the first guy we thought of that we thought would allow us to do the demonstration in his town and be a guinea pig for this project. And I think I may have shared this project with you guys last year. I can't remember. remember. But we call it the test track. I shouldn't call it a test track with Buzz Powell around. I mean, he really has the only true test track. But we took a series of streets, all in relatively the same condition in Fairfield, and we put 4 different microsurfacing mixes on them to evaluate their performance over time. One of those was the highly modified micro. That same mix with some fibers, fiberglass fibers in the mix, and then conventional micro and conventional with fibers. And Scott and I actually looked at it yesterday, and it's only 2 years old now, and all the sections are equal. It's hard to distinguish. It's hard to tell any difference, as we would expect. Only 2 years old. All the sections are performing very well, and we may not have any conclusions to our little experiment here for a few more years. We'll have to see. But that's an example of how he's an innovator.
Currently in Fairfield, we do over 10 processes, and within some of those processes, there's 8 or 10 different variations. So you can really get a true flavor for how challenging it is to set up crews and stuff. But the reason we believe that's important, Howard had even indicated in his presentation, you know, how much money are you really going to invest in your cul-de-sac? So you're looking at, yes, the road needs work. Maybe it's a reclaim candidate, but realistically, do you have the money to go in there, do a full depth reclaim, and at the end of the day, what's your takeaway from a 5 or 6 road cul-de-sac or 5 or 6 home cul-de-sac? So we got aggressive with Cape Seals and many other surface treatments, and feel that we've got them in place long enough now that we have good data that they do hold up and they do work. I get into more specifics at the end if there's Q&A, but essentially we welcome tools in our toolbox. We try different varieties because we really feel we have to learn for ourselves which techniques are good and which varieties of those techniques give us the most longevity.
The second reason we nominated the town of Fairfield for the award, as I mentioned earlier, they don't just dabble in preservation, it's the way of life for them. It's the bulk of their program. You know, we all throw this term around, what is pavement preservation? The picture probably tells it better than any of us could stand up here and articulate it, but if you look up the word preserve, that's what it means. It's not rocket science, it's just taking care of what you have. It's good old-fashioned preventive maintenance. And Scott has a true preventive maintenance program in place, and in fact, I'll let him take you through his program for 2016 here.
The significance of this pie, and I realize it's hard to see these charts all the time, but essentially the takeaway from this is we touched 62 miles of our infrastructure in 2016. 54 of those road miles were actually pavement preservation treatments. So that was 87% of our program was in fact pavement preservation. But the real takeaway was we spent just under 60% of our funding to gain that goal. So to me, those are the real impressive numbers. You take a look at the amount of money we put towards the pavement preservation versus the amount of money we put towards the rebuilding and reclaiming projects, and I think it speaks for itself. You got to catch it early with the lower cost products, keep your network strong.
The third reason we selected them for the award is the fact that they are superb communicators. Why is it important to be a superb communicator when you do a pavement preservation program? Well, it's because they have the same problems that every agency person in this room has. First, they don't have enough money. I don't know one agency that tells me we have plenty of money to do everything we want to do, so they need to constantly be advocating and articulating why they need more money for their program. And secondly, they have the same pressures everybody else does to spend all the money at the bottom of the curve. You know, why is that? Because we have a strong tendency in this country to want to fix things, like rehabilitate the road on the left, rather than preserve things. People question us, geez, you know, you guys idiots, why are you spending money on the road on the right? Didn't you know ours is a lot worse? So there's a tremendous amount of political pressure to do worse first. We understand that. If this is the mayor or the public works director sitting at the table here, is this lady calling to suggest that he's missing a preventive maintenance opportunity? Probably not. You know, that's not when the calls come, unfortunately. The calls come when the road's falling apart. So there's tremendous political pressure to spend as much money as possible fixing bad roads, and Scott does a great job with his team fighting that.
From the communication aspect, I think we're all real world here. It's 2018, and everybody out there knows more than we know about our industry. It's just the way of life. Anytime you show up to do anything, they're smarter than the crew, smarter than you. Who thought of these things? But our process starts with a board of selectmen. I have to sell the concept to 3 members, majority vote. If I'm successful and they buy in, I go to the board of finance. 9 members, same majority vote. Then I have to go to the representative town meeting, which is 40 people, used to be 52. Yahoo, they reduced it. I still have to sell majority vote just to get the money in the budget. Now I have to go back to my crews and tell them we're gonna do all these vast treatments, all these different recipes, pull their hair out. Then I know exactly where they're working if I didn't even know the construction schedule, because the crews go out and tell the taxpayers, you're not getting repaved, Scott's doing some cheap seal here, and the phone rings and I have to justify what treatment I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and explain it to the residents. And to my surprise, most residents actually get it, and they appreciate the extra dialogue, and they get the message that you can't sustain a 2-inch pavement dialogue across 288 miles of road unless you're gonna fund it at 8 or 9 million. And that's not gonna happen. So we walk the walk, we talk the talk. We have everybody buy in from every board, every committee, every resident, and then it's on us to go out and do a good job and make sure these jobs will last and work.
The next reason they were nominated for the award is their asset management capabilities. One of the things that we constantly are out promoting is the use of this little red and white booklet that was co-written by a couple of icons in the industry that really started this current trend towards more and more pavement preservation. The late, great Jim Sorensen, who hopefully some of you had a chance to meet before he passed away, and one of our own here, Larry Galehouse, and I don't see Larry in the audience now, but they co-wrote this FHWA publication. I think it was published in 2007, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a little hard to grasp the concept at first, but once you do, it's a very simple tool that we encourage agencies to use to communicate their need and the effectiveness of their program each year. And I'll explain it just briefly here. The concept, as articulated in this book, and you can find that book online pretty easily, is that every segment in the networks that you manage has some remaining service life. If it's a brand new road and it was built with a service life of 25, 30 years, best case, great. Or if it's a road at the end of its service life, it would have 0. But some number from 0 to 30 remaining years of service life in every single road segment in the networks that you manage. And for example, if you had a 100-mile network, and sometimes we'll talk lane miles for state agencies with multi-lane roads, you want to talk lane miles for most towns, you're just talking centerline miles, easier for people to grasp. But if you have a 100-mile network, that network loses 100 mile years of life every year, whether you like it or not, just a fact of life, it disappears. To break even, if you will, to keep that network average condition rating where it is, you got to put 100 mile years of new life into the network. And there's a simple calculation to come up with mile years. For every treatment you utilize, it's the miles of that treatment performed times the service life extension associated with that treatment to come up with a mile years calculation. Is there anybody in here doing a miles year calculation for their program? Very good. Great to hear. So that's Maryland. Maryland, good job. Any other agencies? Not nearly enough towns or state DOTs are doing this calculation, and I would say the world of pavement preservation would be a better place if every agency did this calculation. So now let me turn it back to Scott so he can tell you how he uses it.
So literally annually, I have to set up our program with a goal in mind to do 288 miles. In 2016, again, due to the great funding, due to low costing processes or less costing processes, we had a banner year, and we actually hit 320 miles of life back into mile years back into our network. I will also, unfortunately, have to admit it was the first and only year that I've ever met or exceeded our 288. I'm usually below that delta, so I feel my network is slipping. But what I like about this tool most is not only that you get to look back at how you did, but you can also show it to the boards and show them that the cuts that they're making are definitely going to lower your maintenance level. And if 288 is your target and you're not giving me enough money, I'm only putting 200 mile years back into the network, then you're gonna be short, the money, and you're gonna have problems. And the one thing we've proven, we earmark roads for certain treatments. They cut the budget, it goes off that list, and when we get the money in a couple of years, sometimes they don't stay on that list. They're now costing us a more expensive process. So you didn't fund us initially. We didn't maintain the road through a surface treatment, a preservation treatment, but now we're turning around and spending more money later. So I'm not really sure how they calculate the savings. To me, it's costing us more not to fund it. So I'm proud of what we did this year. I'm particularly challenged with the 1.9 million coming down this year, but we'll deal with it the best we can.
The fifth and final reason we wanted to share with you why Fairfield was selected for this international award was that they have established themselves over the last 10 or 12 years since they endeavored in this robust program to be actually considered regional leaders. We sat down and made a mental list of all the communities that have either visited Fairfield for a tour of his road network or even emailed to him or talked to him over the phone. It was quite an impressive list, and I'll let him tell you about it.
I'll go back to Howard's presentation once again, and Howard said he's talking to the other communities, hear what's working for them, hear what's not working for them. Basically, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. If I'm trying things and they're working, I'd love to share the information. If another community's trying something and it's working, I'd love to hear it. I think, I'm not even sure what's more important, hearing about what's working, or maybe might be more important to hear what's not working. But basically, we don't communicate well in public works. We don't know what the town next to us is doing, let alone a town across the state. So I welcome the opportunity when people do contact us, and we reach out to other communities as well and share what information we have learned. Hopefully it's a takeaway that we can all continue to develop and keep the name of pavement preservation going in a good light. I didn't highlight on it, but I guess the story got out about our successes in Fairfield. So down south there, you see a lot of those states highlighted. They actually got together, rented a van, and came up and did a little show and tell, a windshield survey of our town, and they were thoroughly impressed. And it made me feel good, but more important, they really had some takeaways. We get kind of cute when we pave a road. I deliberately leave like 50 feet. So I paved the road in 2008. In 2015, I'm going to do a surface treatment. I'll leave 50 feet non-treated deliberately to show the residents and the municipal leaders what the road looks like, because basically they all love the new sealed road, and in a few years you see the unsealed road starts to fall apart, and it helps reaffirm that our maintenance program in terms of sealing and protecting your investment works. So when I took that community out to see those roads, they got it. It goes back to the slide, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I was tasked in 2004 to work with the city next door to me. Great guys, great relationship, and we mutually agreed we're gonna do a 2-inch mill and fill right across the board. But the big difference was in 2010, we decided to go out and crack seal and micro seal, and they didn't. We ended up investing $3.75 a square yard in 2010. We are now going to invest in a second generation crack seal this year, and it's scheduled for another micro seal in 2019. I believe, I'm not sure which road your community wants to see, but my community likes to see the road on the right, and they wouldn't be too thrilled to see the road on the left. Not only to mention the cost now to go in and fix that is probably significantly higher than what I've invested. The good news and the moral to the story for me, that neighboring city has now caught on to what we do, and they're boasting a very vibrant program on doing hot-in-place recycling, single micros, double micros, and they've come a long way, and they're stretching their money. I guess I'll say one parting shot, which will be, to me, microsurfacing actually saved my network. When I was grossly underfunded and looking for a tool, I literally went into Cape Seals and Micro Seals, and not only did it save my network in terms of pushing the envelope with low PCIs and building them up, but I literally saw tremendous drop in potholes. The roads we didn't seal, much more problems long-term. The roads we sealed, a lot less problems. So we nickname it that not only do we feel Micro Seal saved our network, we also call it our pothole preventer. We think there's a direct correlation to reduction in potholes. Thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.